before I ask Elaine to come up, I'm going to look for a seconder for the nomination. Seconder, Mario Leclerc. I now declare Elaine MacDonald acclaimed as our NDP candidate for SPSP. And here's Elaine, the lady of the hour, Elaine MacDonald.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Darlene. Thank you for the nice things you said, and also thank you for both of you contributing to my speech in a sense. I know I got the word that, well, actually Brian told me I had to talk for 20 minutes, and David told me I had to get everybody out of here in time for the hockey game. So I'm kind of torn between two really powerful men here. Let's just see how fast I can talk. Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, chers amis, membres de NPD. Je vous souhaite la bienvenue et je vous remercie tous d'être venus ici pour soutenir ma candidature. Je demande votre soutien le 6 octobre et aussi dans le cadre des préparatifs menant à cette date. De concert avec notre leader, Andrea Horvath, je promets de travailler dur en votre nom. Plus précisément, je vais travailler à rendre la vie plus abordable, redresser les soins de santé et soutenir la création d'emplois. So, we're here tonight to formalize my candidacy for the next provincial election. Some of you have known me as a federal candidate, you've known me as a municipal candidate, and now you see me here as a provincial candidate, and I don't blame you if you're confused, but I want you to know I am not confused. I have never felt so right and so at home in a candidacy and a campaign as I do right now. I think this is the one that I've been in training for all my life. As a teacher, provincial policies set the terms of my working life entirely and also establish the learning conditions for my students. And as co-chair of the Health Coalition, I was constantly batting my head against the brick wall of our provincial health policies. And finally, as a municipal politician, I have another insight into the scope and the power of the Ontario government. And I've also gotten a little hint of some arrogance in there too. What I can see from all those vantage points in the Ontario government is a pattern of abuse, misuse, and failure of power to address people's needs, and I want to get to Queen's Park to fix that. So I welcome you here to the launch. And I've got to say some really important things before I get into the politics. I want to thank all of you for your participation tonight. This is really goodwill when you come out when there's no contest. Thank you. And thank you for the trust you put in me. And on everybody's behalf, a big thank you to Brian Lynch for his zealous work in rebuilding the party. Brian, you're always there for all of us, no matter whether we're rank and file or whether we're candidates. And I have to tell you that your work is really appreciated and known at Queen's Park too. And by the way, Peter Tabin sends his greetings. I saw him on Saturday. And of course, Paul Miller says a big hello to you. And Andrea says hello to everybody. I'm also grateful to the former candidates who are here. Each campaign really is a launching pad for the next campaign. And there's been a pattern in all these campaigns. Laurie started it. And, well, I picked up on there after you, I think, Laurie. And then it was Darlene, who built on my successes. And then Mario Leclerc, who took Darlene's achievements even higher. And so you see the pattern. And of course, I also want to thank my life partner, David Denonay, the best campaign support and friend anybody ever had. Now, in absentia, I also want to thank our leader. And I want to say a few words about her. You see her featured on this poster series up in the front of the room, and I really want you to come up and take a look at them afterwards. The caption for this series is, "Not your grandfather's NDP." Now that quote came from the Toronto Star, and I have to agree. Andrea Horvath is not your grandfather's NDP. Now actually, she might be. But there is in the popular mind this idea that the NDP is like the do-gooder party, the ones that you can trust with health care and social services. But when it comes to the real meat of government, like finance and things like that in industry, well, you want to save that for the real politicians. And I have to say that Andrea is absolutely refusing to be framed as the do-gooder politician. She's in the middle of things at Queen's Park, and she won't let herself be shoved aside. To everybody who watches her work, it's obvious that we are there in the mainstream, and we're not going to be sidelined. Thanks to Andrea. So please come up and admire the posters. The Ontario NDP, under Andrea Horwath's leadership, punches above its weight, and always has. We're here about jobs, we're here about the economy, we're about green energy, strong rural communities, affordable education, and about pension security. And did I mention we're also about a hospital or a long-term care bed when you need one. Now, I mentioned affordable education in that list, and you probably thought it's the same old, yeah, we've got the highest tuition fees of all the provinces. That's not what I'm talking about. It's worse than that. Do you know that last year, parents contributed over $500 million to the Ontario education system through user fees? Kids and parents are paying for everything these days, from equipment for gym, equipment for art, and the worst, it's even now into English courses, and there's no option there. You have to take English. I mean, at least if you couldn't afford art, it was a terrible tragedy, but you could get your diploma without it. So $500 million, and that's the government squeezing subsidies for the education system from the people that it's supposed to be supporting and providing. So you can see how affordability is the first issue with the NDP. Now, Brian mentioned some of the policies that we've adopted to help people afford things in our province. But I want to tell you first about, I'll consider that Brian's told the best of the good things that we're going to do. I just want to review for you, though, some of the things the Liberals have done and that we have to change so we keep our resolve. When they were elected in 2003 after Mike Harris and Ernie Eves, I think a lot of us thought things were going to get a lot better, especially, for example, in healthcare. We thought the trend of privatization was going to be reversed. Well, let me tell you, folks, it wasn't. It was just slowed down a little bit. Because here's what they did. They levied a new tax, a healthcare premium, and then they proceeded to delist services and cut beds. They delisted physiotherapy and eye care. They invested millions in a new e-health central information system and didn't track the spending with predictable results. We all lost. They've ushered in a surge of privatization in long-term care and home care that is largely unregulated. And they've introduced a competitive bidding system that's a classic example of the proverbial race to the bottom. That program saved money, but it cost jobs and it betrayed the clients it was meant to serve. So for all the spending and turmoil that we've had after 20 years in healthcare, we have an unprecedented backlog, bed shortages, and growing wait lists. And in energy, the pattern's the same. The costs of the green energy initiatives are spiraling out of control, and the Premier is telling us to expect constant hikes as the new normal. And people are hurting as a result. Across the province, people are struggling to make ends meet, and government policies are making it more difficult. And everything we've heard from Tim Hudak so far indicates he'll change all of this for the worse. His press conferences and pronouncements remind me of a line from a Lauren Elliott CBC show, madly off in all directions. Just keep this in mind. First, he was going to cancel the HST completely. Remember that? And then I suppose somebody told him about the 5-year term of the deal that had been hammered out with Minister Flaherty. And so he seized on the plan, our plan, of removing the provincial portion from home heating and hydro. Problems with the Green Energy Act? No problem. He'll simply repeal it. Can you imagine what a waste of investment that would be? There are problems with the Act, but what we would fix, he would simply demolish. This man is reckless, and you know, if he weren't running as a serious politician, you could maybe have a few laughs when you hear of some of the things he proposes to do. Anyway, stay tuned. I'm sure there's going to be lots more recklessness and folly coming from him. For us, though, we are the real alternative. We will fix things. After touring the province, Andrea and the caucus determined that affordability was going to be the #1 plank in our platform. affordability in every way. And Brian's mentioned some of them, I won't repeat. Now, you have to look to politicians when they talk about their policies to see just how they propose to pay for it. Because unless the check comes along with the promise, it's not worth whatever. So, we're not making any promises that we can't pay for, and how we intend to pay for our policies is by repealing the corporate tax cut policy. We're going to put the corporate taxes back up to 2010 levels. Do you know that the policy as it stands is meant to take $1.8 billion out of the provincial treasury? We need that money. Now actually, even Dalton McGuinty knows we need it, and so he's found a way to put it back in. It's called the HST. So we just want to be there in the mainstream of Ontario politics. It's going to mess with that grand plan of his. We're not going to let that happen. Corporations and the big banks have to pay their fair share, and as Brian said, it just makes good economic sense. You don't reward people hoping that maybe they'll be grateful and create jobs. You wait till they create the jobs, and then you give them the tax break. And that's what our plan is. We want to see the plan, we want to see the effect. And all the plans that we have, touching the HST, touching affordability, will affect rural communities too. We mustn't forget that our post-recession economy that has brought us low-wage jobs with no security or benefits, these aren't limited to the cities of Cornwall, or Morrisburg, or Chesterville, Winchester, or Iroquois, or the villages of Williamstown, for example. Precarious employment is not an exclusive urban phenomenon. So farms and rural homesteads have undergone a dislocation as great or maybe even greater than we have experienced with our loss of industry. Thank you, Laurie. The family farms that remain struggle to survive as neighboring homesteads are being swallowed up by agribusiness and intensive farming operations, which can't even support the entire family without sending a spouse or children into the cities to work. Farms have big money in land and assets, but they've got even bigger debts, and they've got no cash flow. The deepest challenges that we face as members of the province of Ontario are common to rural and urban, and the first of them is affordability, and we will address that concern. Now, of course, the biggest issue facing us, the place where we need the most work, and which we will do, is in healthcare. Some hits to healthcare have been dramatic. I'll just give you a quick summary since 1990, and you'll notice I'm including 1990. This takes in Bob Rae's government as well. For 20 years, there has been a shrinking, a decimation of the Ontario healthcare system. People trying to find ways to deliver care more cheaply. 18,500 beds have been cut from the provincial system since 1990. The idea, of course, was to move people out of hospitals and into a community where they would find the care they needed in long-term care homes or even in their own homes where they'd have home care. Well, Madeline can tell you the kind of shortage there is. Home care is rationed to the point that people have to be desperately ill to be able to qualify for it. And long-term care homes, you know what the current wait list number is? 10,000 folks. And it was 10,000 4 years ago, too, the last time that there was a government analysis published. So that's not going anywhere. Now, you have to be naive if you think that of those 10,000 people, they will eventually find a place in long-term care. No. They will leave us before they get the care they need. And you have to be utterly cynical as a government if you know that and you don't take drastic steps to change that situation. We will take those steps. As far as healthcare goes and all the other policies that we mentioned here tonight, I have one thing to say to Dalton McGuinty, and that is that, Dalton, your time is up. You had your chance, you dropped the ball.